Congressman Berman. This bill is not only sponsored by myself, it is sponsored by the whole Washington State delegation, by Congressman Ron Wyden of Oregon. The concept that this bill advocates is supported by the administration. Let me just briefly describe for my colleagues the whys and wherefores of this bill. The region west of the Cascade Mountains in the Pacific Northwest is known as Cascadia. And there is a corridor within that region running from Vancouver, BC, down to Eugene, Oregon. It is an area of incredible growth. The demographers are predicting that in the next several decades, the population growth in that corridor, percentage-wise, may be the greatest on the North American continent. That comes about in part because of the desirable environment of the area, in part because of the Canadian-American Free Trade Agreement, and other reasons. Just to give you one statistic, in 1986, the vehicular border crossings at Blaine, Washington, in this corridor across the Canadian-American border, were 5 million, approximately 5 million. That was 1986. In 1992, this year, it's 11 million, and the Customs Office tells me that in the year 2000, they are projecting 28 million. That gives you an idea of the growth. But with that growth that can be positive comes tremendous challenges if we're going to preserve and sustain the environment of the Cascadia region. That is what this commission is about. What we have here is a bill that puts the federal government behind setting up an advisory body that would bring federal, state, provincial, local officials to the table in a forum to discuss the environmental, transportation, economic challenges in the Cascadia corridor region and allow them to together propose strategies to meet these challenges. I thank my colleagues for their help on this, and I ask for a favorable vote.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Michigan's time has expired. Gentleman from New York.
Mr. Speaker, I have no further requests for time and yield back the balance of my time. I ask unanimous consent that all members be given 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks.
That objection is ordered. The gentleman yields back his time. All time has expired. And the question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 6077? So many as are in favor will vote aye. Those opposed, nay. In the opinion of the chair, 2/3 of those present having voted in the affirmative, the rules are suspended. The bill is passed. And without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. The gentleman from New York.
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and pass the resolution H-Con Res. 353, expressing the sense of the Congress that the United States should take a leading role in implementing the decisions made at the Earth Summit as amended.
The clerk will report the title of the resolution.
House Concurrent Resolution 353, concurrent resolution expressing the sense of the Congress that the United States should assume a strong leadership role in implementing the decisions made at the Earth Summit by developing a national strategy to implement Agenda 21 and other Earth Summit agreements through domestic policy and foreign policy, by cooperating with all countries to identify and initiate further agreements to protect the global environment, and by supporting and participating in a high-level United Nations Sustainable Development Commission.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from New York, Mr. Engel, will be recognized for 20 minutes, and the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Broomfield, will be recognized for 20 minutes. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from New York.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume and ask leave to revise and extend my remarks.
Objection so ordered. Gentleman's recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong support of H-Con Res. 353, expressing the sense of the Congress that the United States should assume a strong leadership role in implementing the decisions made at the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro. developing a national strategy to implement Agenda 21 and other Earth Summit agreements through domestic policy and foreign policy, by cooperating with all countries to identify and initiate further agreements to protect the global environment, and by supporting and participating in a high-level United Nations Sustainable Development Commission as amended. I now yield to the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Pelosi, the sponsor, to explain the resolution.
The gentlewoman from California is recognized.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the gentleman for yielding. In fact, it is a very simple resolution, which the gentleman has just mostly explained. I would, Mr. Speaker, like to take a moment to thank Chairman Fassell and Mr. Broomfield, Mr. Yatron and Mr. Beereiter, the chair and ranking member of the subcommittee, and the members of the Foreign Affairs Committee for their assistance in expediting consideration of this legislation. The Earth Summit Environmental Leadership Act, as this is known, presents us with an opportunity to follow up on the important work of the Earth Summit to develop its blueprint, Agenda 21, for global environmental action. HCON Res 353 outlines a comprehensive national strategy for sustainable development in accordance with the principles of Agenda 21 to be coordinated under the leadership of a specific office and at the direction of a high-level government official. The resolution also urges the United States to identify and initiate further agreements to protect the global environment and to support the creation of a high-level United Nations Sustainable Development Commission headed by an Undersecretary General. Third and lastly, the President is urged to report to Congress on the progress made on with this action. HCON Res 353 is supported by the administration. I have been in contact with the appropriate offices of the State Department and have incorporated their suggestions into the resolution. The 71 co-sponsors of this measure include one-half the members of the Foreign Affairs Committee and all of the House delegates to the Earth Summit. It is also supported by the major United States non-governmental organizations concerned with the environmental issues. The Earth Summit presented world leaders with an opportunity that should not be lost. We must now embark on a new course that will sustain our planet and its resources for the benefit of future generations. This resolution calls on the United States to assert its leadership to achieve this goal. I urge my colleagues to support this resolution. Thanks again to the members of the Foreign Affairs Committee for their recognition of the importance and timeliness of this resolution. We must make the promise of Rio a reality. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentlewoman's time has expired. The gentleman from Michigan.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself as time as I need, and I ask permission to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objections to order, the gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I do support this resolution, which expresses the sense of Congress with respect to implementing the decisions of the recent United Nations Conference on Environment and Development. And I do want to express and commend the gentlelady from California, Mrs. Pelosi, for her sponsorship of this important resolution. Mr. Speaker, despite all of the criticism of the administration policy toward the Earth Summit, the fact is that the United States government made a very constructive contribution in Rio and in the talks that led to the meeting in Rio. Largely as a result of the conference, they adopted four major items: the Rio Declaration on Environment and Development, the lengthy action plan referred to as Agenda 21, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, and the non-binding but authoritative principles for the management and conservation of forest resources. In addition, the conference adopted the UN Biodiversity Convention, which the administration decided not to join at this time. And this was due to concerns about intellectual property and also the decision-making and funding mechanism. The administration has already made a good beginning in implementing the results of the conference. And during the talks on climate, the administration pledged $75 million for related projects in developing countries, including the development of national plans. The President announced that the United States would have our own national plan on climate ready by the end of the year in order to start international consultations in January of 1993. The President announced a Forest for the Future initiative to double worldwide forestry assistance, beginning with $150 million additional U.S. contribution. The administration is preparing for consideration by the UN General Assembly of establishment of the Sustainable Development Commission called for in Rio, and is working on an interagency basis to formulate further plans to implement the other recommendations of the conference. The good start made by the administration shows that the United States is serious about international cooperation to address global environmental problems. The resolution before us calls for similar measures to implement the recommendation of Rio Conference. The State Department does support the provisions of this resolution, which are fully consistent with U.S. policy toward implementing the results of the Earth Summit. Mrs. Pelosi should be further commended for her cooperative attitude on the issues that were raised by the Department at an early stage in the consideration of this resolution. Mr. Speaker, I was also appointed to the Earth Summit as an observer, a delegation. Although I did not actually attend the conference, I did follow the proceedings very carefully. Recently, I had the opportunity to contribute to an article on these matters to a magazine called Michigan International Lawyer. I request that this summary of my views be inserted in the record at the conclusion of my remarks, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Objection, so ordered. The gentleman yields back his time. Gentleman from New York.
Mr. Speaker, I have no further requests for time and yield back the balance of my time and ask unanimous consent that all members be given 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks.
Without objection, so ordered. The gentleman yields back his time, and all time has expired. And the question is, will the House suspend the rules and agree to House Concurrent Resolution 353 as amended? So many as are in favor will say aye. Those opposed, nay. In the opinion of the Chair, 2/3 of those present having voted in the affirmative, the rules are suspended. The concurrent resolution is agreed to, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. The gentleman from Texas.
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 4059 as amended.